Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome back to the IGCSE series of economics. And today we're moving onwards with our syllabus, and we'll be discussing about what factors of production are, what the quality and quantity of factors of production mean, and what is meant by the mobility of factors of production. So if we talk about factors of production are simply the inputs and or resources that are used in producing the goods and services to satisfy the needs and wants of the consumers. So factors of production क्या होते हैं? These are basically those essential inputs, those resources that we use to produce goods and services, and those goods and services are eventually used to satisfy the needs and wants of the consumers. In economics, we categorize factors of production into four major categories. First of all, we have land. Land is basically all natural resources that are used to produce goods and services. Now, one thing that I want you guys to remember is that land does not only include the physical land or the physical land or real estate, right? So it's not just the physical area or the premises that we're talking about. Land includes all other resources as well. It also, but all natural resources such as oil, water, gas, coal, and etc. Even if you're using some animals for producing goods and services, those animals, those cattle, and those domestic animals will also classify as land, because these are in fact the natural resources that are used to produce goods and services. Now remember this thing that I told you, that each factor of production has a reward as well. When the firm employs a factor of production, they need to pay that factor of production in terms of something. So the factor reward for land is what we call rent, right? So the income that land earns, or the owners of land earn from providing that land to the firms, is the rent that they receive from it. Moving on with the second factor of production is labor. Now remember this thing, that labor is not the people themselves. Labor refers to the physical and mental. So physical and sorry. So physical and mental efforts of people, of basically workers who are working there to produce goods and services. Now remember this thing कि labor की efforts जो हैं, the skills that they are providing are in fact what we classify as labor. We do not classify the person as the labor. So for example, if we want to distinguish between a worker and the labor, so the main distinction is, for example, a teacher is a worker, and the teaching that he does for the business, the teaching skills that he has, that he provides to the school or the college that they are teaching, is the labor. Similarly, a chef is a worker, but the skills that he has, the cooking skills that he has, are that he provides to the restaurant, or the hotel that they're working, those skills are classified as labor. So I hope that the distinction between labor and worker is clear. Now remember this thing, that the factor reward for labor is what we call wages, right? So labor की skills के against जो the payment that is made to the labor is what we call wages. In addition to moving on, the third factor of production is what we call capital. Now, capital के अंदर, one thing that you guys need to remember is that money is not capital in economics, and we'll talk about this in a while. So capital basically includes all man-made resources used to produce goods and services to satisfy the needs and wants of the consumer. So any man-made resource that is used in the production process is what we call capital. Now remember this thing, capital can be financial and capital can be physical as well. In economics, only physical capital is counted as what capital in economics. Remember this thing that money is not capital in economics. So जो भी finance है, the cash that you have, the savings in banks, those are not what we call capital. Remember this thing, capital includes machinery, the tools that you use, even the roads and infrastructure that you use in the production of goods and services. All those things are counted as capital, but money is not counted as capital in economics. The reason for that is we know that the resources and the factors of production are limited in their supply, but this characteristic does not apply to money because at any point in time the government can increase the supply of the money by just printing more money or doing open market operations. So money is not considered capital in economics because the supply is not limited. Virtually it is limited. It seems that the money supply is limited, but it is in our hands, that it's in the government hands to increase the supply of the money at any given point in time, and therefore we do not classify money as capital in economics. Moving on, when we talk about entrepreneurship, which is the fourth factor of production, you guys should know that this factor of production is basically the ability and willingness of the entrepreneur to develop, organize, and manage all other factors of production. So ये वाला जो factor of production है, this factor of production basically combines all the other factors of production to produce goods and services. This factor of production also takes on the risk of loss and aims to make a profit. So the factor reward for entrepreneurship is the profits that they make. Now, so we missed the factor reward for capital. Here, the factor reward for capital is, we call the factor reward for capital, the payment that is made against the capital, as interest. Okay, moving onwards, having discussed about these factors of production, now we need to discuss about the concept of what mobility of factors of production mean. So mobility of factors of production. So mobility of factors of production by definition means that it is the ease with which labor, capital, land, and entrepreneurship can be reallocated from one production use to another, right? So this is what we mean by the mobility of factors of production. It's the ease by which factors of production can be reallocated from one use to another. We have different types of mobility, and we'll be talking about the two major types today. That is, number one, geographical mobility, and the next thing is occupational mobility, right? So one thing that you guys need to understand is that the ease by which we can move factor production is known as mobility, and that ease could be geographical and occupational as well. Geographical mobility क्या होती है? It's basically the movement of factors from one place to another, right? So for example, if I am working as a laborer and I'm providing my skills to a business in, let's say, in Pakistan, and I want to find a job elsewhere, let's suppose in UK and US, and I can move there, that would mean that I'm geographically mobile because I can move between places to look for other jobs. In addition to that, if I cannot move between jobs easily due to my family commitments, or due to the fact that I cannot find jobs, I cannot move easily to another location, that would mean that I'm geographically immobile. So geographical mobility is the movement of the factors of production from one place to another. Usually, labor is more mobile than what we call capital and land, because land ko move karna is difficult and capital ko move karna is also difficult. So land and capital are something which have a lower geographical mobility, but labor usually have a more geographical mobility. Moving on, when we talk about occupational mobility, it involves the movement of factors between different uses or industries, right? So for example, this would mean, for example, if I am right now working as a teacher, and if I can easily move to another job of, let's suppose, an investment banker, that would mean that I am occupationally mobile, which means that I can move between different jobs very easily. And that is why I'm occupationally mobile. On the other hand, if, for example, if I'm working as a teacher and I'm not able to find a job elsewhere in any other place, for example, in tourism sector or in the banking sector or in the finance sector, so if I cannot find the job, I would have a lower occupational mobility. That would mean I cannot move between my jobs. For this, similarly, if we talk about capital, if a machinery can be used to produce bikes and cars at the same time, or any other, if that same machinery can be used to produce any other good or service, that would mean that the capital is occupationally mobile because it can be used to produce another goods and services. On the other hand, if it cannot be used for other purposes, that would mean that the factor of production is occupationally immobile. In addition to that, we need to understand what are barriers to mobility, that which makes the mobility of factors of production क्या कहते हैं, less. And that सबसे पहले we'll be talking about the physical barriers. Physical barriers are like geographical factors, like distance and terrain, right? So people living in farther areas, in rural areas, are unable to travel to the urban areas to find jobs. So a person is also limited by the locality that they live in, and that usually reduces their geographical mobility. In addition to that, there are some legal factors as well. Legal factors किस तरह के होते हैं? For example, immigration laws, intellectual property laws, and etc. For example, what this basically means is that if I want to move to US to find a new job, I need to apply for a visa, and I need to follow the regulations of the US government, and I have to make sure that I fill all those check boxes. So government can also impose those barriers to the mobility, because if I cannot emigrate to another country, and I cannot abide by their laws, I won't be able to go there and do a job there, and therefore my geographical mobility becomes less. In addition to that, there are some economic barriers as well. And what do we mean by economic barriers? These are basically barriers associated with moving or retraining, right? Because if let's suppose that I'm working as a teacher and I want to go to the banking sector, then I would require retraining, and that retraining would require me cost. And if I don't have enough money to do the retraining, I won't be able to do the retraining. So that means कि वो जो retraining cost मुझे incur हो रही हैं, that would eventually lead me to become more occupationally immobile, because in order to move to another industry, I have to get trained, I have to get the knowledge of that sector. So that is why these are some barriers that are created for the factors of production to move between different users and industries, and therefore their mobility is reduced due to these factors. In the next video, we'll be talking about the quality and quantity of factors of production. See you inshallah in the next class. Allah Hafiz.